Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Alberta government announced that $27 million more will be added to the recent budget to help fight crime in the province. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation speaks out against the upcoming carbon tax increase and raises for our Canadian MPs. And we hear from our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, who investigated if Israel is looking into legislation banning the gospel of Jesus in that country.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. 6 people were shot and killed at a Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee on Monday morning. Police say the victims included 3 children aged 9, along with 3 staff in their early 60s. The suspect, a woman and believed to be a former pupil, was shot and killed by police. Authorities say the suspect entered through a side door and went to the second floor armed with at least 2 semi-automatic rifles and a handgun. The incident occurred around 10 a.m. local time at Covenant Presbyterian School in Nashville. The school has around 200 students, kindergarten through grade 6. The suspect's motive and identity is not yet known. Hundreds of police officers and civilians gathered in Edmonton to watch and take part in the procession for 2 Edmonton police officers who were shot and killed in the line of duty. A regimental funeral took place for Constables Travis Jordan and Brett Ryan, who were fatally shot by 16-year-old Roman Zoltan Shuchuk earlier this month. The funeral was held at Rogers Place. The service was not open to the public, but a live stream was broadcast in an outdoor plaza near the arena. A bus with more than 30 members of the Lethbridge Police Service, Lethbridge Fire Department, and Alberta Sheriffs headed to Edmonton on Monday to take part in the march and regimental funeral services for the 2 EPS officers who were shot and killed. Lethbridge Police Association President Jay McMillan says when something like this happens, they're generally trying to send as many members as possible. He says it's important to show support for the families of the slain officers, along with their brothers and sisters in blue.
You can't support it enough. We just can't. I think the reason that so many people are interested and so many people are invested is because every time it happens, it hits so incredibly close to home. Because any member on any given day are subject to the same dangers that these 2 young men were, and everyone in our families knows that as well. So it's devastating when it does happen, and it's a little bit too familiar.
McMillan adds that a regimental funeral such as this will generally draw law enforcement from across North America. The Alberta government announced that Budget 2023 will see an additional $27 million to help fight crime. Officials say the funding will be used to hire more sheriffs and providing new tools to fight rural crime. Public Safety Minister Mike Ellis says the new sheriff's teams will assist RCMP who need investigative support.
The Alberta Sheriffs have an existing surveillance unit that will work with Alberta law enforcement response teams regarding serious and organized crime investigations. The RCMP has its own surveillance capacity as well, but like the sheriff teams attached to Alert, it's focused mainly on major investigations. These new sheriff teams will fill a gap by helping the RCMP detachments with local investigations that the current model does not account for.
Federal Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne announced that $36 million will be going to support the production of semiconductors or microchips. Champagne says this is really about investing in the future and helping to reduce Canada's electricity consumption. He says developing more microchips will be key.
Pleased to announce that we are partnering with Renovis right here in Ottawa to help the company develop computer chips for the next generation of data centers and artificial intelligence applications. Indeed, the very new chips, the one that you saw here, which are amazingly small. I mean, the laser to do that is smaller than one of your hair. And they were showing us that the laser to manufacture these chips will be the world's fastest, they will be the smallest, and they will be the most power-efficient chip used in AI and machine learning. And thanks to this technology, servers will now be able to process more data and also to do it much faster, all the while reducing the energy consumption of data centers by almost 15%.
Champagne adds the $36 million will support a $100 million project with Renovis that will help advance domestic production and manufacturing of both semiconductor products and services. A day before the release of the federal budget, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was trying to get the Trudeau government to not introduce any new taxes. The Prime Minister and his cabinet are not giving any public hints about what will be included in the spending plan.
He's raised taxes on paychecks, raised taxes on gas, raised taxes on home heating, raised taxes on food, raised taxes on small businesses. And what does he want to do this Saturday? He wants to raise taxes again. Mr. Speaker, inflation is at a 40-year high after 8 years of this Prime Minister. Canadians cannot afford to eat, heat, and house themselves. Will he show a little bit of restraint and commit in tomorrow's budget to no new taxes?
We've demonstrated every step of the way that we're there to support workers, that we're there to support Canadians, and that's exactly what we've done. When we lowered the small business taxes to record levels and even allowed larger growth from small businesses while continuing to benefit from those. We've continued to step up on supports for workers, continued to step up on supports for families, and that has created both economic growth that has benefited everyone as opposed to the trickle down that the Conservatives still push with tax breaks for the wealthiest, as we have continued to grow the economy in meaningful ways for everyone.
Bars, restaurants and breweries across Canada are set to feel the pinch on April the 1st. The federal government announced the biggest increase to the alcohol excise tax in nearly 40 years. It's going up by 6.3%. Experts say this tax will have a huge impact on those who enjoy a drink and companies that provide them. BCN's Micah Quinn has that story.
They are really struggling, and beer is their profit driver. So if they have to pay more for beer, they're in a real pickle.
When Canadians make their next trip to the liquor store, a restaurant, or a bar on April 1st, they can expect to pay just a little bit more. CJ Healy, the president of Beer Canada, says this tax will hurt the alcohol industry in Alberta and across Canada moving forward.
It will be really a devastating impact to, as you say, not just brewers, but barley farmers who rely on brewers to buy their product, and obviously the hospitality sector, who's just been really struggling to recover from the pandemic.
Franco Terrazzano, the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, told us this alcohol tax increase is coming at a bad time for our country.
Canadians are already paying an arm and a leg every time you go to the liquor store or the pub. You pay about half of the price of beer in tax, 65% of a bottle of wine in tax, and about 3/4 plus of your favorite vodka, whiskey, or rum in tax.
Numbers from the Canada Revenue Agency say on a litre of wine, the excise duty rate is increasing a little over 4 cents. For a 750 milliliter bottle of wine, the increase would be closer to 3 cents. The Canadian Minister of Tourism and Associate Minister of Finance, Randy Boissonneau, outlined what the figures would look like for a can of beer.
What we're actually talking about, Mr. Speaker, is less than 1 cent per can of beer. That's what the federal amount is.
According to a recent survey by Restaurants Canada, only around half of licensed restaurants in our country are operating at or below profitability levels. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Now, as of April 1st, the carbon tax will also be going up, making it that much more expensive to heat your home and fuel up your vehicle. A lot of Canadians are not happy about it. You can include the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation in that group. Franco Terrazzano joins us once again from Ottawa to discuss this increase in more detail. Franco, how will this really impact us?
Well, it's going to mean higher gas prices every time you go to the pump. It means it's going to be more expensive to keep your homes warm, but also means higher food prices, because when you increase costs for farmers, families pay more at the store. When you increase costs for truckers, families pay more at the store. And you know what? The carbon tax will cost the average family this year anywhere between $402 all the way up to $847, even after the rebates. And that's according to the parliamentary budget officer.
Now, also on April 1st, our federal politicians will be giving themselves a nice, healthy raise?
Well, this is such insult to injury, because on the same day that members of parliament are going to take more out of your wallet. They're going to stuff more money into their own wallet. April 1 will be the 4th time that members of parliament have taken a pay raise since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. This year's pay raise will range from an extra $5,100 for a backbencher all the way up to an extra $10,200 for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So from an extra about $5,100 to an extra $10,200. And get this, a backbencher already makes about $189,000. The Prime Minister already collects about $379,000 from taxpayers. So these MPs don't need another raise, and they definitely do not deserve another raise when they make your life more expensive with tax hikes.
Wow, thanks so much, Franco. That was the Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Franco Terrazzano, joining us from Ottawa. Well, it was a bit of a snowy start to the week here in southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, we may even see a few more flurries tonight.
Yeah, a bit of a snowy start, you say. Yeah, for sure. I would say it looked like winter was in full scale again. It was actually quite shocking to wake up to and see. But we did receive close to 5 centimeters of snow today, and we are expecting another 2 to 4 centimeters overnight. That with an overnight low of -13. Quite chilly for this time of year. Going to feel like -16 by early in the morning. That's with the wind chill. After that, though, that should be the end of the snow, at least for now. Hopefully, high of 0 tomorrow, looking at a mix of sun and cloud. And the good news is for the rest of the week is we're going to be seeing some pluses, could even get some double digits. I'll be back later in the show to give you all those details.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. 10 people were injured after a house exploded in the northeast Calgary community of Marlborough on Monday. Police say all 10 were taken to hospital, with 6 in life-threatening condition following the explosion, which occurred just before 9 a.m. on Monday. According to firefighters, the force from the blast also damaged and ignited 2 nearby homes. EMS officials said arson investigators were working with the Calgary Fire Department to determine whether the fire was criminal in nature. NMAX reported a power outage following the explosion, not only in Marlborough, but also in Franklin and Forest Heights. City officials said power was restored around 2 hours later. RCMP say a school bus transporting students crashed just northwest of Colehurst on Monday morning. Just before 9 a.m., the bus collided with a pickup truck on Township 10-2 and Range Road 232. It isn't known how many students were on the bus at the time of the crash. The driver of the pickup did sustain serious injuries and was taken to hospital. Fortunately, no one on the bus was injured. The investigation is ongoing. Lethbridge seniors have been defrauded of around $26,000. Now, that's according to Lethbridge police, who say a group of criminals are making their way across the country involved in a so-called grandparent scam. Sergeant Kevin Talbot with the Economic Crime Unit of Lethbridge Police Service explains how it works.
They're giving them or telling them a story of how they're in trouble, and they create a sense of urgency so that they think that if they don't act, that their grandson or granddaughter is going to be in more trouble or be injured or be held in custody with the police department or something of that nature. So then they convince them to separate themselves from their money in order to help their grandson or grandchild. Then what they'll do is they'll make arrangements to either meet them somewhere, or they'll come directly to their home and pick up the money, and claiming that the individual picking it up is representing either the police department or correctional service or something of that nature.
Sergeant Talbot says if you know someone who's fallen victim to the grandparent scam here in southwestern Alberta, to call Lethbridge Police right away at 403-328-4444. A special Easter egg hunt was held over the weekend to pay tribute to Sharon Christensen, a Lethbridge woman who passed away from cancer back in 2016. Her daughter, Mallory Christensen, says there are over 4,500 eggs hidden by students from Catholic Central High School for the kids to find. She also said it was an amazing way to honor her mom.
It was probably one of the most fierce forms of cancer. It was very aggressive. We were under the impression we had 2 years, and then within a couple months, it turned out to just be a year. And then we ended up losing her within 6 months of the diagnosis and after a very major surgery in Calgary. So my mom always loved Easter, and I just knew immediately that was the best way to be able to honor her. And every year, it not only keeps getting bigger, but it just keeps getting more beautiful in her memory, right? And we're able to just share with friends and family and community members the love that she had for Easter, and also the love she had for community as well.
Christensen says this is the 7th year in a row now for the annual Easter egg event. Well, spring is here for the most part, and that means the thought of summer travel is on people's minds. If you live here in southern Alberta, it turns out you don't have to go very far to make the next road trip. Lethbridge has several UNESCO World Heritage sites that are a short driving distance away. We caught up with Erin Crane of Lethbridge Tourism to give us some examples.
And I don't know if everyone is aware, but Alberta has 6 UNESCO World Heritage sites, and 4 of them are within driving distance of Lethbridge. And, I will say that they are pretty full all summer long. So if you're a resident and you want to go and explore, do it in those shoulder seasons. You're going to have way less traffic, and they are very appreciative of, spreading out kind of that year-round destination.
Now, do you think you know where those sites are? Make sure you catch the full interview with Erin Crane of Lethbridge Tourism and BCN's Jeanette Rocher to find out if you're right. That's coming up in the second half of our program. Phase 1 of the Horsefly Regional Emergency Spillway Project is officially underway. The initiative, once completed, will address flooding concerns following mass flooding southern Alberta received back in 2010 and 2011. The Reeve for the Municipal District of Taber, Merrill Harris, says it's exciting to finally get this project in the works and to have everyone involved.
The groundbreaking was phase 1, which is the stretch from Tabor Lake down to the Old Man River. But what's exciting about this project is the number of municipalities and towns and villages between Lethbridge and Medicine Hat that are working together to get this done. I believe there's 4 counties, 3 towns, a village, the St. Mary's River Irrigation District. So it's good to be able to get that many municipalities and different entities involved in creating something that everybody believes is in the best interest of all of southern Alberta.
The estimated cost for phase 1 of the project is around $20 million and is scheduled to be completed next year. Well, it looked a bit like a snow globe earlier today across much of southwestern Alberta, and that white stuff may be sticking around a little while longer. Complete weather details are on deck. The average high for this time of year is around 8 degrees for Lethbridge. We were quite a bit below that. We also received a few flurries as well today. Jeanette Rocher is now with a complete look at the weather picture. Jeanette, we may see a few more flakes tonight.
Yeah, we could see another 2 to 4 centimeters overnight. Now, we are in for a little bit of a strange road here weather-wise. This week looking a little odd. We got the minuses, we got the pluses, we've got double digits. We're kind of all over the place. So we're looking at a high of 0 by Tuesday with a mix of sun and cloud. Lots of sunshine on Wednesday with a high of 4 degrees, down to -1 again for Thursday with mainly cloudy skies. And then look at that, we're going to jump all the way up to 9 degrees on Friday with sunny skies, and then up to possibly double digits by Saturday, high of 10 degrees. And then we're looking at a high of only 2 degrees on Sunday, so with mainly cloudy skies. So we're a little bit on a roller coaster ride there for the week. Going to be looking forward to those double digits. So average high for this time of year, 8 degrees. Average low, -5. 22 was our high temperature on this day back in 1986. And in 1965, we had the chilliest, which was -24. Sun rose this morning at 7:20 and our sunset this evening at 7:54, close to 8 o'clock tonight. So I'm really noticing those light evenings with the daylight stretching well into the evening, loving it. A beautiful day in Victoria tomorrow, albeit a bit windy. Sunshine, high of 13 degrees, looking at 30 to 50K winds though. 13 as well, the high in Vancouver tomorrow with the sunshine expected. Beautiful sunny day across the prairies tomorrow. Edmonton looking at a high of 4 degrees, -1 the high in Calgary. As we look to the rest of the prairies, we are still seeing those the wind chill values, and we could see some risk of frostbite. So -7 the high in Saskatoon tomorrow, sunny skies, sunshine, and a high of -8 in Regina, looking at -29 for a wind chill value in the morning, and -8 in Winnipeg, but looking at -31 in the morning with that wind chill, and that can equal to a risk of frostbite for both Winnipeg and Regina. Toronto sitting at 8 degrees, sunshine tomorrow, 3 degrees the high in Ottawa with partly cloudy skies, and mainly cloudy skies tomorrow with the possibility of some flurries. 4 degrees the high there in Montreal. As we look to the Maritimes, Fredericton sitting at a high of 6 degrees tomorrow. Showers expected though, a high of 6 also in Halifax with partly cloudy skies. A mix of sun and cloud expected tomorrow in Charlottetown with a high of 2 degrees, and 1 degree the expected high tomorrow in St. John's, but they are under a freezing drizzle advisory, so they could see some freezing drizzle mixed with flurries and then flurries mixed with some rain showers by the afternoon. So there you go. That is your forecast.
Today's weather report is brought to you by Ridge Utilities, providing competitive rates for electricity, natural gas, and internet, while investing back in communities across southern Alberta.
Cameco says it expects to receive a refund of around $300 million after the Canada Revenue Agency issued revised reassessments for its 2007 through 2013 tax years. The refund includes $89 million in cash and $211 million in letters of credit. The uranium miner says the timing of the refund has not yet been determined. Cameco has been tied up for years in a dispute with the tax agency over a foreign subsidiary. Trains, planes, and public transit systems are at a standstill in Germany after labor unions called a one-day strike in an effort to win inflation-busting raises for its members. Today's walkout also affects cargo transport by rail and ship, as workers at the country's ports and waterways have joined the strike. Unions are seeking a pay increase of at least 10.5% and have dismissed offers from employers of 5% in 2 stages, plus one-off payments. It sounds as though the cost of a green salad may be going up. Industry experts say lettuce prices will likely rise next month as a key California farming area has been hit hard by severe rain and storms. The flooding has destroyed fields and delayed planting. Due to increasingly volatile growing seasons, some large companies such as McCain Foods and Wendy's have made investments in greenhouses and vertical farming. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 123 points on the day to finish at 19,624. The Dow was up 194 points to 32,432. The S&P 500 was up 6 on the day to 3977, and the Nasdaq was down 55 points to 11,768. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 362 on the day to 72.88 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 14 cents to 208 US. Gold was even on the day at 1956.67 US an ounce, and silver was also even at 23.08 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.26 per bushel, barley's at $9.01, canola's at $16.70, and corn is at $10.62 per bushel. Live cattle April contract was up $1.90 to $164.90. Feeder cattle March contract was up $2.70 to $192.35, and lean hogs April contract was up $1.45 to $78.63. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 73.19 US. Recapping one of our top stories, 6 people were shot and killed at a Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee on Monday morning. Police say the victims included 3 kids aged 9, along with 3 staff in their early 60s. The suspect, a woman and believed to be a former pupil, was shot and killed by police. Authorities say the suspect entered through a side door and went to the 2nd floor armed with at least 2 semi-automatic rifles and a handgun. The incident occurred around 10 a.m. local time at Covenant Presbyterian School in Nashville. The school has around 200 students, kindergarten through grade 6. The suspect's motive and identity is not yet known. More than 1 million people have been protesting in France and demanding the resignation of French President Emmanuel Macron. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will explain why momentarily. She'll also have details about a potential legislation banning Christian being taught or preached in Israel may be coming up. If you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Enjoy a fun evening with your spouse at Mark Gunger's Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage event, taking place May 12th and 13th at Miss City Church in Lethbridge. Through his hilarious humor, Mark Gunger shares the difference in men and women's thinking and ways that couples can come to understand each other and build strong marriages. Tickets are $45 and can be purchased online. Visit Miss City Church Facebook page for the link. Do you have a heart to serve our community? Streets Alive Mission is looking for volunteers to help make sandwiches, sort incoming donations, assist with Foot Friday, and many other opportunities to serve, receive training, and to provide support for this important cause of bringing hope to the hopeless. Visit streetsalive.ca to fill out their volunteer application or call 403-320-1159. And that's today's Bridge City News community calendar.
The protests in France continue. So many are angry at French President Emmanuel Macron's pension reforms, which would see the retirement age increase from 62 to 64. More than 1 million people nationwide have been protesting, and police say more than 440 officers have also been injured during clashes with protesters. Now, to chat about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from the City of Angels, Los Angeles. Lisa, many of these protests began in January, and they're continuing unabated. There are even calls now for French President Macron to resign.
Yes, the French are very serious this time around. I mean, they have been pretty serious. I've been in France, actually in Paris, while there were protests, and they fill the streets. It's almost like a Saturday gathering. But this time around, we're seeing much more bold moves by the protests. We're seeing them set fires. We're seeing it spread across France. This is not just contained in Paris. This is in different cities as well. Look, the French people are very serious about this. They do not want the retirement age to be moved. When you think about it, look, 62 is very young, and 64 is also very young. So I know that the Europeans do look forward to retirement, and they do have a different quality of life than we do here in the States, at least. And in terms of being workaholics, I think a 62-year-old and 64-year-old in the United States is nowhere near retirement, at least mentally. So yes, they are on the streets. They're asking for Macron to step down. They're very serious about this, but I should say this is actually getting in the way. Obviously, Macron had to cancel some of his diplomatic meetings because of these protests, and of course, it's not a good look to see these fires burning in the streets of France, and the people coming out. They said almost 1 million people came out in protest against the government.
We've also heard that King Charles canceled a potential visit to France as well, because, like you said, the fire's burning, and with all the protests going on right now.
Right.
Lisa, we've been hearing reports that the Israeli government was potentially looking into outlawing the preaching of Jesus in Israel. What have you been hearing?
Right. So, this is a very important question. I have looked into this deeply because I'm very much interested in these reforms and what it means. So let's just unpack this for a moment. What we're seeing right now in Israel is a lot of people out on the streets, and they are leftists pretty much for the most part, people who do not want this right-wing government of Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister, to put forward some judicial reforms. Now, just to rewind, Benjamin Netanyahu himself is a right-wing leader, but his coalition is more right-wing than he is, much more conservative, and it is made up of different constituencies within Israel. And as you know, Israel is a very interesting patchwork of different religions, different cultural backgrounds. You have people from the Middle East, you have people from Europe, and they are at odds right now because this is the first time in many years that these more right-wing constituencies are in office, and those who are on the left, who have had their time, are not on board with a lot of these reforms. Now, at the same time, there are many things being mixed up here and convoluted, and we have to straighten them out. And I want to do that right now. Every year, there are bills put forward, just like here in the United States and in Canada and any other country. And many of those are cockamamie. They're crazy. They're very extreme, and they get thrown out right away. One of those being that Christians cannot practice Christianity or read the gospel or learn about Jesus. That was put forward by a very extremist politician, and it was thrown out by Benjamin Netanyahu already. It's already been thrown out. It will never survive, and it's probably not the first time that it was proposed. Right now, we have to be careful of a lot of the reporting that's coming out of Israel, because in order to illustrate the point that right-wing politicians should not have a say or should not put forward these reforms, and I'm not saying whether they're right or wrong, I'm just saying a lot of misinformation is coming out in order to illustrate how extreme these politicians are who are in office. One of those bills being about Jesus, another one, I can give you many examples. I don't want to get into it. We actually will have this expert on Israeli the Constitution and Israeli law on the Foreign Desk podcast next week to really break this down, and I will report back after that. But just to answer your question right now, this bill was absolutely thrown out. It will never survive, and I will tell you, the only place in the last few decades where Christianity has thrived in the Middle East has been Israel. And I'm sure that Bibi Netanyahu and anyone else who loves the land of Israel loves that the three religions of the world, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, can live side by side in a small country the size of New Jersey. And we know that the Christian Friends of Israel are some of the biggest supporters. They are absolute Zionists, and they have helped the country thrive. And I'm glad to see that it will continue that way.
Thanks so much for that, Lisa. We really appreciate it. Now, let's also talk about what's happening in Syria right now. 19 fighters were killed in Syria by U.S. airstrikes after an alleged Iranian drone attack. There are reports that Iranian proxies have carried out around 78 drone or rocket attacks against U.S. troops in the Middle East since the start of 2021.
Exactly right. And thank you, Hal, for bringing up that important statistic. I also have another statistic. Just since October, we have 30 or more attacks without consequence. This is one of the only times we're seeing an actual retaliation by the United States, and it begs the phrase too little too late, perhaps. We are seeing an emboldened Iranian regime that has been able to get away with really provoking the United States. We're actually in a proxy war with them. You know, for anybody who thinks, Iran is thousands of miles away, they can't reach us. I mean, they do threaten Israel, but guess what? They can reach us, and they are reaching us in Syria and in Iraq and in other places in the Middle East where the U.S. has assets or has interest. And that's exactly what's happening, especially, Hal, when there are no consequences. You'll see them provoking us more and more and more. Secondly, you have protests going on in Iran, and the best gift we can give the Iran regime would be to take the attention off of the protests on the streets that are against them, with the people calling for regime change, and for them to be able to say, look at us, we're fighting the United States, or we're involved in a war, or we're involved in a proxy war, and to get really to distract from what's going on back at home. So let's keep our eyes on this. This is very, very important. These proxy wars are very important. And of course, we're glad to see the United States actually step up. But again, the message has to come loud and clear from the White House that it will not tolerate this kind of behavior.
You know, when Donald Trump was president of the United States, Iran knew where it stood. There was no real gray area, but now it appears as though a perceived passivity by the Biden administration by some has appeared to really embolden and given Iran's regime that much more confidence.
Absolutely. And you're seeing that play out day by day, right? So with Donald Trump, he withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal in May of 2018. And again, that nuclear deal was what President Obama got us into in 2015. Very happy to shake hands with Iran's regime, but we got nothing for it. Then we just got a piece of paper with some meaningless signatures on it. It did not stop the Iran regime from marching forward with its Iran nuclear program. From enriching uranium, from getting the parts to deliver a weapon, and from making threats against Israel and the United States. And of course, human rights abuses back at home carry on. Then fast forward, you had President Biden. He campaigned on getting back into the deal. Now imagine, there was no behavioral changes. This was just an ideological shift in the White House to get back into the deal, to make friends with the Ayatollahs once again, and to apologize for Donald Trump's behavior. That's exactly what we're seeing play out now. Now, the Biden administration has taken a step back from getting back into the nuclear deal and said, we're not going to move forward just yet. Well, it didn't mean that they changed their policies. The Ayatollahs know exactly where the White House stands, that they are not enforcing sanctions properly, that they are not serious about any part of holding Iran's regime accountable for any of these measures, or calling them out, or supporting the people on regime change. So for that fact, we see Iran's regime really playing out the clock, seeing what they can get away with during this Biden administration. And of course, they have gained. They have made absolute gains. And one last fact that's very important is that even though we didn't go forward with the Iran nuclear deal to release billions of dollars to Iran's regime in that way, like we did in 2015, the Biden administration has found unique and creative ways of releasing money to Iran's regime, and most recently through Iraq, getting Iran paid $500 million or more, and there's many deals coming that way. And again, looking the other way while Iran makes deals with China and Russia. So it's a much longer story. We have to connect the dots, and we have to understand that the passivity that we're seeing from the White House has absolute consequences, and that's what we're seeing from the Iran regime.
Lisa, Russian President Vladimir Putin says as the West steps up its military support for Ukraine, his country will set up nuclear weapons in neighboring Belarus. Could we maybe see the Ukraine-Russian conflict turn into a nuclear war?
Well, that's what it sounds like. There's concern, right? Obviously, we knew that Belarus was going to get involved in some capacity, and here we are. They will be having their nuclear weapons there. Of course, this being very, very worrisome, as you said. Will this be the next escalation we see? And that has always been the big question. I mean, we're waiting. Look, this is Putin's world. We just live in it, right? We're waiting to see what his next step will be, and of course, the big question being whether or not this will turn nuclear. Look, we still talk about this conflict as, what or how will this de-escalate? And the United States and the West, and I know Canada's involved as well, and as are many nations in Europe, giving more money and giving more resources to the Ukrainians. To what end? I mean, if Russia is threatening us with nuclear weapons, if they're now holding them in Belarus, if we know that is their next step, I mean, how can we ever combat that with any of the billions of dollars of military aid that we're giving Ukraine? So, the international community has to get creative, and they have to get smart, and they have to really think about how to de-escalate this as soon as possible.
Let me ask you something. Are we getting any closer to a peace accord between Zelensky and Putin?
Right. When you hear about Putin holding his nuclear weapons in Belarus, that should tell you everything you need to know about how close we are to a ceasefire. It seems as though as time goes on, both of them become more emboldened. Zelensky becomes more emboldened to win this somehow. And I say that because he's going around asking for more and more aid and resources, and really shaming countries that have given him already so much to giving him more. And somehow it's worked thus far. It has worked. People have become very generous when it comes to giving aid to Ukraine. Look, nobody wants to see this war, but people are getting tired of it, and we want to see some sort of resolution. I mean, this is taxpayer money. This is money that, again, can be used, to help other causes. And I know that Taiwan and China are watching. And if the West is running out of resources, how will they help Taiwan in a meaningful way if China should decide to invade? And if they do, will that be during the Biden administration? And will they be smart enough, I should say, to make that calculation, to say, look, the West is really overspent when it comes to military aid and getting involved in foreign conflicts. We have a presidential election coming up here in 2024. Are we really going to get involved in another war? So China will make that calculation as well. So many, many consequences to the foreign policy or lack of foreign policy that we're seeing coming out of the West right now.
I'm glad you brought up the election coming up next year in the United States. Will President be the Republican nominee? How about DeSantis?
Great questions, Hal. This is going to be a very interesting presidential election for us here. We may have a woman candidate, Nikki Haley, for the Republicans. DeSantis is a very popular candidate. DeSantis, however, has come up short in polls against Donald Trump. Donald Trump having his own legal issues and his name being tainted in many ways. Look, this country, I should say that the establishment here in this country is doing everything they can to stop the phenomenon that is Donald Trump. So we don't know how far he can get, but I know that the popularity is still there. He still brings in thousands and thousands of people who are going to drive, hours to see him. And I don't think any other presidential candidate has that kind of star power. He still has it. And of course, the Democrats probably just waiting by and seeing what they have to do. Maybe they have to do nothing and just watch the Republicans destroy each other themselves. So we'll watch this all, evolve or implode, whichever comes first as we move forward towards the election.
The Daily Caller News Foundation says there's an email and some email evidence that appears to contradict Dr. Anthony Fauci's denials that he had any role in deciding who would be part of a 2020 conference call that discussed whether COVID-19 originated from a laboratory leak. Tell me more about that.
You know how it's so upsetting to watch the evidence come out about not only Anthony Fauci, but social media, the country, all being complicit in fabricating this narrative around COVID, around school closures, around different types of medications, around the vaccine, not being able to ask questions of your medical provider, and then now, as this comes out, what was his job? Why was he even involved in really shaping this narrative and not just just being the scientist that he was paid to be. And again, I think people are so fed up that a lot of people aren't listening to these corrections or this transparency that we're now getting. If we're being fully transparent anyway, this might just be a drop in the bucket, Hal, and there might be so much more to this, and I'm sure that there is. So yeah, I mean, it's very embarrassing. This is a stain on our country, on the way that we report in the news, the way that, Americans have every right to become numb to it all, to not trust your doctor, not trust social media, not trust the news outlets. Where should we get information? And it seems as though there's this reverse dichotomy that we're living in. As we get more information and more artificial intelligence and more, search engine capability, we have less of an opportunity or fewer outlets to give us the truth and the news and to tell us what we need to know. And for that reason, I just hope that this next generation grows up with more questions than answers, and they are able to really combat this system. And it's stories like this, and I thank you, Hal, for really underscoring a lot of this, because I think it's very important to at least note that there were these kinds of fabrications all along the way.
U.S. correspondent and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, thanks once again for joining us from Los Angeles.
My pleasure. Thank you, Hal.
Well, with spring and summer just around the corner come opportunities for travel and tourism. But many of us don't always think about touring our own backyard. There's a lot to see and do right here in southern Alberta. For instance, did you know that Lethbridge has 200 kilometers of trails in its rugged coulees? Yeah, it's also just over an hour from the Rockies, the Badlands, and a day trip to 4 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So to talk more about all the tourism opportunities of Lethbridge, I am joined today by Erin Crane, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Lethbridge Tourism. Erin, welcome to Bridge City News. So great to have you on.
Thank you, Jeanette. Yes, that is my role here at Tourism Lethbridge.
Okay, so Erin, maybe start off by talking a bit more about these miles and miles of trails in the Lethbridge, not to mention the World Heritage Sites. I, for one, didn't even realize we were that close to so many until I started doing some research. So
we have so many little hidden gems here in our community. And we hear that again and again from travelers that come that, they're like, oh, we had no idea. Oh, we had no idea. And this is the opportunity for us. We have so much. We just need to get the word out about them. So the River Valley and all of the nature and adventure things that we offer, they're a huge draw for everyone in Alberta, everyone in Canada, and even beyond. So things like our trails, the biking network that we have is amazing. You had mentioned the hub for the 4 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And I don't know if everyone is aware, but Alberta has 6 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and 4 of them are within driving distance of Lethbridge.
Okay.
Huge.
So what are they, Erin?
Oh, easy. Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. Amazing if you haven't been. And again, we hear this over and over again, especially from residents that, oh, I think the last time I was there was in the 5th grade when I went with my school class, right? If you haven't been to these places, go, because they change over time and they're so unique and so special. The other is Riding on Stone Provincial Park. Became a UNESCO World Heritage Site a few years ago.
Amazing. It's gorgeous for anyone who hasn't been there.
Oh, yeah. And, I will say that they are pretty full all summer long. So if you're a resident and you want to go and explore, do it in those shoulder seasons. You're going to have way less traffic, and they are very appreciative of, spreading out kind of that year-round destination. And same, Waterton National Park. It is the Peace Park between the United States and Canada. And one of the things that makes Alberta very special and is a big attractor, especially for those international markets, is Dinosaur Provincial Park. And many people, they always think of Drumheller, but the provincial park actually starts down near the Brooks area. and then runs all the way up the province. So we get a lot of people exploring, again, because they can get some really good experiences in kind of that less busy atmosphere.
I had no idea. See, I'm learning so much from you. I had no idea that the dinosaurs started that close. I know I'm a huge hiker. I love our coulees. I didn't quite know how much hiking there was or what all there was to do around here. I'm going to have to get out more often. So, Erin, if someone in the area maybe doesn't have a lot of funds, maybe not a huge budget for travel this summer, talk about some of the stuff that they can check out and do on the weekends, maybe closer to home.
Our community is fantastic for this stuff, Jeanette. You know, there are so many amazing organizations that are putting on events that draw in visitors from out of town, but are really designed to keep the residents happy and to welcome them in and to find out about more of these things. Things like dragon boat races, street wheelers, the air shows, all of the arts and cultural events, like over at Southern Alberta Ethnic Association. There is so much to get involved in, and so many that are free and open to the public. Don't get me wrong, there are a few that, you know, will charge an entrance or may have kind of layers to them. You can do this for free, but if you want to come to the dinner or see the show, there's a cost for that. But more and more, and especially those events that are supported by the city of Lethbridge through their funding programs, that's a big part of it, is making it so that everyone in our community can get involved and to get out and connect with each other and build that social capacity that makes Lethbridge so special.
And there's a rich Indigenous culture here too, isn't there?
There is, and that is becoming more and more popular, not only because we see the opportunities and the ability to tell great stories, and our Indigenous partners are the best storytellers that there are. We're actually working with some partners with the Reconciliation Committee here in Lethbridge on an Indigenous filmmaker series to learn more about those stories and have them tell them themselves, which is really exciting. But for the international travelers and for those who come, you know, from around, you know, Canada, and especially those urban people that we get coming in, you know, these are things that they don't quite understand, and we need to tell them about, and we need to educate them because it is so important to everything we do.
Yeah, well, I mean, Lethbridge is positioned well for that transportation corridors around us. So are there some events or factors that we can attribute to draw to Lethbridge? I know that we have a wide reach when it comes to tourists from other provinces and even the States.
Yeah, our location is ideal, right? And even with our partners at Travel Alberta and even with Destination Canada, right? Being located where we are, we're the first stop when many travelers from the South come into Canada, right? So we get a lot of those people looking for the Alaska Highway that are on their way up. And this gives us the opportunity to welcome them here, find out a little bit about them, and encourage them to spend more money here in our region before they head on to someplace else, but to also kind of point out some of those other unique areas where they could be. So we are definitely a big player in that ecosystem of looking at those high value US travelers.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, you mentioned it. Every dollar does count, of course. So can you share with us the importance of tourism to our local economy?
Gosh, you know, this is a good conversation to have, and it's one that we have been trying to have more and more. We were up at the Tourism Industry Association of Alberta's Advocacy Summit last month. And it was reiterated over and over again about how important tourism is to municipalities and communities. We are a sector of multiple industries. Tourism touches a little bit of everything. We work in agriculture, we work in supply chain, we work in alternative energy. There's always a tourism component to it. And this is one of the things that we have been doing more and more here at Tourism Lethbridge, is tracking that economic impact.
Oh, good. Would you maybe have some numbers or figures for the impact that tourism has on like city businesses each year, for example?
So again, we're just getting started with this information. The estimated economic impact numbers of events in our community, which is over 57 million. And that is a huge number. And again, we can attribute some of that to major events that we held in 2022, like the Tim Hortons Brier and the Alberta Treaty Hockey Provincials, right? Those came on at a time when our tourism businesses needed it most. They had been decimated by the global pandemic. And all through 2020 and 2021, those businesses struggled. So it was really nice to see this emergence of tourism once again in 2022. And while we saw some really good numbers, we know that we still have a long way to go, and that a lot of those businesses are still recovering and still need our help. So that's exactly what we're doing. How do we let the world know about the opportunities here in Lethbridge and bring in more visitors?
Yeah, 100%. So how would you recommend that small businesses in our city tap into that tourism opportunity?
You know, the best thing to do is to get in touch. We have been doing a lot of advertising lately about, fantastic organizations that are hosting these events. We highlighted the curling club locally because it's their work that actually brought in the Tim Hortons Brier. We didn't do it. The city of Lethbridge didn't do it. It took a local organizing committee, passion and time and dedication that actually brought that in and made it the success that it was. And we need more in our community to think about doing that. If you sit on a provincial board or a national board, could we host your conference here? Are you involved in a sporting organization? Could we look at hosting a provincial or a national tournament here? And we're here to help, right? We need you, we need the community to step forward and plant those ideas, but we're here to help. And so let's do it together. Reach out, connect with us. We'd love to make it happen.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned conferences there, and for sure that's a big thing. What we didn't mention was trade shows. So what's the expectation that the new trade center could bring to the area?
We have a real opportunity with the opening of the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center. We bring in a lot of people from Alberta, and actually Alberta was one of the best for having people move around and explore within their own province during the pandemic. But what the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center allows us to do is to really open up to national and international markets that we never had access to before. Right? We couldn't go and we couldn't talk, even have conversations with people because they were looking at, hosting thousands of people. Now we can, and we have the real opportunity to, especially connect with those agricultural events that happen so often. And a lot of it, we're attending and we're talking about how great Lethbridge is. Now we get to open the door and we get to invite those people here to our community and to our region to find out exactly how spectacular we are and what are all of the opportunities, right? Is that opening your own business? Is that maybe coming here now that you've been as a visitor, you want to come back because you see the job opportunities and you think it's a great community and offers the quality of life you're looking for? So these are the opportunities that tourism opens the door for.
Wow. Okay. And so we were talking about the Agri-Food Hub, which is, of course, Lethbridge and District Exhibition now, I think. Can you talk a bit about the impact that the Ag and Seed Expos have on our city? And what about my favorite, of course, is Home and Garden Show? We didn't get to have it this year. Did you feel its absence?
Well, we always feel the absence. And, I think these are things that we're working on is, how do we maintain events? How do we maximize events and again, bring the community in more or, bring more people to town? So, we always look at that. And, there are so many fantastic industries here in Lethbridge. agriculture does play a big part in that. It's, 20% of our GDP, and that's just primary agriculture. Everything kind of layers on top of that. So looking at those opportunities like alternative energy, that's a perfect, tie-in to the agriculture. And another thing that really makes Lethbridge stand out as special, because not many communities or destinations can offer the things that we offer. So again, we have real opportunities.
Yeah, I think we're sitting, smack dab in the middle of Canada's premier food corridor too.
Yes, that's a huge opportunity, right? We continually talk about Canada's premier food corridor and what happens in this region that doesn't necessarily happen anywhere else in Canada. So this is our unique selling proposition that we can go out and we can maximize.
Yeah, 100%. So looking forward to the summer season here in 2023. What's the biggest draw? I know Whoop Up Days, of course, is huge, the end of August. What else is happening this summer?
Yeah, well, again, we have a great lineup. The Dragon boats are, getting ready to hit the ground running in July. We always have Pride Weekend, which brings in tons of people from around Alberta and the region, and even into BC and Saskatchewan, which is really nice. And that's what we want to do. So if you're holding an event, reach out. Let's figure out how we can maximize it, how we can promote it into other markets to bring some more visitors into our community.
Erin, thanks so much for being with us today. We all look forward to a great summer of short road trips in southern Alberta and touring around Lethbridge.
Yeah, thank you, Jeanette. It was a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Erin Crane is the Chief Executive Officer of Lethbridge Tourism. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.